Graceless, tarnished. What is thy business with these thrones?
ELDEN Ring, the final journey of the Souls games, all of FromSoft's knowledge made into a massive, expansive world. Being a game that was so good, other companies got worried this would be the new standard. And even in the last few years, it has felt like ELDEN Ring has created a new standard of game. Winning Game of the Year and keeping in our minds with or without the memes.
And say that I think I want to nominate this award to my Reformed Orthodox Rabbi Bill Clinton. Thank you, everybody.
A journey of ambition, grace, lost runes, a world so torn that there seems no hope, but even under all these odds, a lowly tarnished seeks to be Elden Lord. As a tarnished of no renown, what chance do we have at becoming Elden Lord? We are just a foul tarnished who is maidenless. How could it even be possible? That's what Elden Ring is all about. Overcoming the challenge, the wall, the feeling of besting a hard-fought enemy, climbing the mountain. It's not about becoming Elden Lord, it's about proving that no challenge is too great. The journey starts with everyone who is someone gets name dropped in glorious fashion, while again, all we are is a nobody. I chose Vagabond as my starting class as I wanted something even, and I said, I know what I'm going to play. I'm going to play a strength build. Point in denying it. Every game before I was like, I'm not going to play a strength build. Ends up playing a strength build. But of course, the first true boss I must defeat. I'm going to defeat this one this time. I've played every single Souls games and haven't beaten one yet. The first boss, the tutorial boss. I don't care. I'm going in. I got this. Fuck! Moving on. There is one tutorial area that the game wants you to go through, and that's where the hardest boss of all time is. Soldier of Godricks, man. I don't know how I did this. Must have been luck. Jokes aside, seeing the lands between for the first time when you come out of the elevator is such a majestic sight. The world is so massive and all you really see is such a small portion of the world. It's still breathtaking. I also love that they lie about the map size. They don't show what it could fully look like. You only see this small little portion and you're like, oh, that's not a lot. And there's maybe a little bit map over here, a little bit map over there. I got that. But it still seems so huge comparably to my small little guy. And one thing I will say that this game does way better than Sekiro is the world building through the surroundings. This game tells the story through the land. Example, Calied is this monstrous island that was once the center for great conflict, and you see that through the corruption, the blood, the aimless warriors walking around. Merchants from faraway lands like the crow merchants who sell items they've pawned off corpses. When you go to an area or a castle, it sets up what the boss is going to be like. Godricks knights, for example, hide behind their artillery, showing Godrick is doing the same thing, hide it behind his grafted body. But Radahn's knights are honorable and will be more likely to fight you head on, even though I wish they didn't. And in Leyndell, all the knights have the fanciest looking army. They stand tall with their lightning. Malenia's knights almost look beaten, but even though they're rusted and look half dead, their destructive force is scary. And through just exploring the world, it builds what has happened in this land without ever really having to tell you. Another example is the D1 starting up, the Tree Sentinel. Miyazaki really is a troll. After losing to this hand thing, you get Tree Sentinel to really pummel you. He is the gatekeeper for when you rise, stopping Tarnished from ever continuing their journey. Miyazaki is mad funny, putting a mid to late level enemy as the first true boss you run into. One thing I always remember when I play this game is that there's so much to explore. Every time it feels fresh. There's always things I miss, things I didn't see. A side quest I didn't do. I find something new or just do something new that changes everything. Example, this NPC that jumped me and hit me with major blood loss. I don't even remember finding him in my first playthrough. Different action. For example, this NPC I found, normally I don't kill him, I let him live, but I was like, you know what, let's see what it does. And he gave me this armor and this really cool weapon. So Elden Ring 2 years later is so replayable. There's so much to just find and do in this game. It's almost endless. right? I love exploring and I find a chest and oh, it's a trap. Now I'm in Calied. Or just finding a brand new cave with a different boss you haven't seen before. A new way to get somewhere, a brand new NPC with a new side quest. There's always something and it's so much fun. And the combat helps a lot. This is the most evolved version of Dark Souls combat. Your basic heavy light swings with the charge attack, but also at the same time you can jump. So you have jump attacks and the Ashes of War, special ability every weapon can get, or what I really like is most basic weapons you can give its own Ash of War and put that onto a weapon. So even if someone's using the same weapon as you, they may play very differently via the Ashes of War they're using. I also feel as dual wielding is the best in this game. You can actively use both weapons at the same time. Like in my first playthrough, I did the branded Uchi Katana and Rivers of Blood, and the katana combos to bleed loss were actually busted. No wonder they nerfed this weapon. This time though, I found an earlier weapon that I'm going to use until I get to the particular one I have my eyes on. After my first few hours of exploring, of course it's time to meet Melania. She's wishes to be our maiden to help us on our quest and become the Elden Lord. I like her showing up because it gives you that exposition of like, oh, this is what I'm really doing, but it also gives you the sense that someone's helping you out, that you're not alone. You have this person traveling with you, even though she doesn't really do much or talk much in the game. And also giving us the ability to level up. We need this or else this game is going to be impossible. And Torrent, our donkey horse thing. But with such a massive expansive world, you need Torrent or else it would just take forever. Now, fortunately, all sites of grace you can teleport to from any point in time. So with a great sword in my hand, my little Scrimblow Bimblow is ready to take on the world. And the first real obstacle to becoming Elden Lord is at this gate.
Foul tarnished. In search of the Elden Ring. Emboldened by the flame of ambition.
IGN killer himself, the fell Omen, Margit, every non-Souls player's worst nightmare. As when this is your first main boss, he seems impossible to get past. He's such a big stone wall that seems so high to climb, but what I love about Margit is once you climb this wall, the game is so much easier after this. Or at least every wall after him doesn't seem as impossible after Margit. And this is why people also say Elden Ring is the easiest. When you can't beat a boss, unlike other Souls games where you're relatively stuck at that point, Elden Ring, because it's open world, there's so much to do outside of the main content that I believe if you took the time and did everything that was available before Margit, you would be level 60 with in-level gear. It's easy. Oh, I can't beat this boss? I'll come back later. Makes it more like an RPG where you go and grind on the side content if you're not the right level. The wall that is Margit is different. He delays almost everything. He holds his swords, but what I always look for is that subtle animation change so I know he swings. Otherwise, he'll track me and you'll remain what you are, a foul tarnish. Second phase, he brings out a hammer. Watch for when he jumps and comes down. Has a lot of recovery time on that. The only thing that kept getting me was the sword combo. I never seemed to be able to dodge it. But I had one round where I staggered him 3 times, and that's why strength builds the best. Margit is the wall to the rest of the game, as this opens up Lothric Castle. We are warned at the gate to not pass through the castle, but come on. I'm not stupid. With my current vitality and the arrows and the lion, there's no chance I'm getting through there. Time to go around. One thing I did realize about this game is even in the main dungeons, there's always a new way to do something. Typically, I go the long way and run into the birds that should not exist out of all the enemies. I will say, I don't know why, but these guys are the hardest. But instead of going through them, I went through the roof, making it a way faster journey getting through all these nights. The journey to the first demigod, and it's Godricks. a joke. I still say Margit is harder than Godric. This gross grafted mess, thinking that grafting these body parts to him will make him stronger, even though he's the laughingstock of the demigods. He's the cousin that is never invited to the family cookouts because of his weird obsessions. He uses his wild swinging axe, but it's so predictable. He does try to get you with his hand. As soon as he finds out that he's losing, the dragon hand comes out. And I'll say this dragon hand is probably one of the easiest to deal with. Once he does the flame breath, he's just giving me my heaviest hitting attacks. He also does this super predictable jump that leaves him wide open. What a joke. It makes you think, is this really what the Golden Ordered standard is? Are they as washed up as Godric? Kinda. I mean, all the demigods are broken, corrupted, and when all the leaders are broken or corrupted, the world will reflect it. Exactly what the so-called Golden Order is. Just a bunch of messed up teenagers with godlike power. Well, with the exception of one. The Tarnished is really coming in like a therapist, fixing all these family problems, but instead of using words, I'm using 10-pound steel rods. I also take a detour to the Round Table, the Tarnished gathering grounds, and greeted by the many other Tarnished that each have their own desires and quests, like Fia, who you should always give a hug to, Blacksmith Hugh, who lives a tragic tale, Gideon, the all-knowing. He'll tell you where each of the Elden Lords are, but it makes you wonder, if he knows where they are, why doesn't he stop them since he's all-knowing? But with Godric dead, the rest of Elden Ring opens. Our next area to get brutalized in is Lunaria of the Lakes. Every time I come through this area, it always feels like I'm being hunted by something new, whether that be magic ghosts or Larry the Lobsters. It's always a rush to the dragon. That's if I can make it there before I'm brutalized and hunted by every crustacean known to man. But once I make it to the main capital, the magic school of Raya Lucaria, the next main legacy dungeon. These wizards put on these masks and robes and act like they're better than me just because they have a higher intelligence stat. But all I know is that magic seems kind of useless when there's a 3-foot galvanized steel rod flying at your face. This area is massive, having schools but also undead. I wonder why there is a graveyard in the middle of the magic school. Like, why are so many people dead? Is this place really a school or more of a fortress? But our first boss of the area is Red Wolf of Radahn. I really like that this is the mid-boss of the area, as the Red Wolf, a gift from Radahn to Rennala. Also, it shows that Rennala may not be in the best position. Why does the strongest magic user in the lands between need a guard dog? A guardian right before her tower. Fortress to protect her. It's if maybe, just maybe, she can't protect herself. But the Red Wolf is a glass cannon, acting like that little pit bull named Princess when he sees a 3-year-old. Doing more damage than any dog should, and with a magic sword. Why are we teaching the dogs magic? Why is this dog smarter than me? It does lose almost all its health with a good few hits on the head. And just a bit further is Rennala, the Broken Queen. I was right, her mind has fully slipped, showing what this family drama does to the person. Maybe she's one of the good ones. Not so corrupt. Well, I mean, let's not say that. I mean, having graveyards in your school is a little whack. Anyway, she has lost it. Speaking of little ones that are just these crippled girls on the ground.
I will hold
And then when you beat her, she's holding this ember lost. And if we take her down, her broken form, the real fight is not even her, it's her daughter, Ranni, the blue witch we met earlier. As she protects her mother, creating an illusion of her at full power with all her magic, all her spells. Like the very well-known Ka are literal moonbeams from Pokemon. But as the two intelligent strength I Uga and Duga, my moves actually do tend to stagger and launch her in the air. And it's funny watching a demigod fly 3 feet high from this lowly little tarnished hits. It shows that maybe we aren't so weak. Yes, we're a tarnished of no renown, but by overcoming walls that seemed impossible, challenge that no one dared to face. These seems like stepping stones. Even being able to step into the high capital of Leyndell. At the time of going to Leyndell, I did travel to a certain side castle to start Ranni's quest. I have my reasonings for doing her quest every single time, but that brings us to Loretta, one of the main side bosses of this game, and one we will see again. Loretta has a long-range spear and magic swords that can slowly and surely keep us down. Attacking is hard because you always have the threat of the magic in the back of your head, but it is easy to protect openings and find some good hits in. This 2 is honestly easier because she does a lot of more risky moves like the giant slash and the big longbow, but if you know how to dodge them, you get a lot of easy hits. And this allows me to form a contract with Ranni and complete her quest for the sweet drip. Now, of course, the next big step in my journey of Elden Ring is, well, Calied. And you may think you're good at Elden Ring until you step foot in Calied. Rot at every turn, dogs and birds that are these horrid creatures. There is a whole peak with maybe hundreds, thousands of dragons, and also my main weapon for this run, or at least one of my main weapons, the Guts' greatsword. Welcome back to the arsenal. Now, you're starting to get why I want Blaidd's armor so much. Calied is honestly my favorite and least favorite area. Always so much fun, but also hell when I'm poisoned every step. But it's also like, oh, look at this giant dragon, or look at this massive jar man. Just a lot, but that's part of the charm. And also where I get Lion's Claw after killing one of the lions. One of the best ashes of war for strength build. I just start hitting them with Guts Flip for absurd damage and stagger. But of course, there's one true reason I ever come to Calied.
O gathering of champions, the revels begin. The celebration of war. The Radahn Festival!
The Radahn Festival, the gathering of warriors to slay the mightiest of demigods, Radahn. The one who should have honestly been Elden Lord if it wasn't for malading him, hitting him with super aids, aka Scarlet Rot, turning him into a wandering beast. But if you look into the lore of Radahn, he was just a chill guy. He learned gravity magic so his horse could still carry him. He was respected by even Godfrey, the first Elven Lord, and tried to be like him, unlike his half-brother. And all his knights still respect him, and they hold this festival to honor his name and see if someone could put him out of his misery. Friendly faces such as Alexander and Blaidd are here to help, and every time I fight this boss, yes, I use the summons. That's part of its charm. It's the Radahn Festival. You're supposed to bring everyone to this fight. Otherwise, I don't know, he does seem like a bit much. In this giant area, he actually starts off with arrows that can shoot for miles, falling from the sky and sniping you at every turn. But when he gets close, that's when the real fight begins. His massive rock-covered swords swings with the might to take out 5 people in one hit. And then in phase 2, he jumps down and crashes down with a meteor, and the gravity magic using rocks, pulling you in for a massive crash. It's such a spectacle. And when you finally defeat him, you already knew he was damaged. You already knew you were fighting was an angered zombie. That's all you were fighting. But as his death, the stars begin to fall. He was holding all of this back by himself and still alone fighting 4 to 6 people. A true demigod and the strongest of them all. No one would be Elden Lord if he was at full strength. I don't care if Malienia won. She had to use Super Aid's nuke that put her into a decrepit coma to win this fight. But this is not the same Radahn I fought 2 years ago, and there is a reason Radahn was nerfed. And this brings me to a topic of nerfing in a game like Elden Ring. I understand nerfing weapons like Blood Veil or the Ice Pick for PvP purposes. It's something if it's too good, no one will play player versus player. But bosses, it makes no sense. Why would we nerf bosses? That's the whole point of the game, to overcome great challenges bigger than us. Sense to nerf a boss down. If someone cannot overcome the wall, they should just, I hate to say it, get good. And what's even crazier is he's not even a required boss to progress. You can go fight Snake Man Rykard if you wanted an easier time, especially with a boss with such lore significance. Why say all these great things about Radahn just for him to not live up to it, just to nerf it? But we'll move on from the great Star Scourged. I can't, because look at this man's power. This is the meteor he was holding back. This left a massive crater this big. But that's a topic for another video. First, I have to get a little medallion and also learn Gideon might not be as trustworthy as he presents himself. Also getting one of my favorite armor sets. Volcano Manor is our next step. Taking the elevator again and running around the mountains, we find Volcano Manor, a gathering ground for those who wish to rebel against the Two-Finger. But these people ask us to join them and say they have a better plan, but their castle is filled with death and hunger. Why should I believe someone who seems to be doing a worse job? Like, there are literal Iron Maidens, my least favorite enemy. I ain't trusting you for shit. Also, why would you build your castle in a volcano? You're asking for it to get destroyed. And on this way, the first battle of this area, Godskin Noble, a fat hitbox for my new greatsword to easily wail on. The rapier can be difficult, but I always just dodge to the sides. Now, when he starts to bring out the blubber and roll around, if you don't cheese where he just rolls on the wall for what seems like an hour, he can deal a lot of damage and take a good amount of heals away. But otherwise, no big deal. Just don't get mixed up when he sits. I did, and I got a face full of it. And really, Rykard is only a few steps away. The God-devouring serpent Rykard, or what he fused with, is the standard win gimmick fight, like the Manta Raid or Yorn. You know, it doesn't matter how easy these things are, but they're just so much fun and so cool. Yes, using this weapon and upgrade it trivializes everything, but these fights are for fun. A little rest, and also a bit of false hope for what's coming next. Looking at Rykard, I look back and I can't believe I found any of these bosses to be such walls. Yes, when I first played this game, everything seemed so daunting, so hard, a hurdle, a path unbeatable, but now it's like, oh, yeah, Rykard, easy. But I think that's all things. It seems so daunting until you've done it once. It doesn't seem so scary once you've taken the leap of faith. Now it's not even a leap of faith. It's just a leap. The main demigods are nothing more than a light hop from what used to feel like a mile-wide gap. I did need to go complete some side things before I move on, such as going to Nokron, the underground area, and this is what an underground area should look like. The deep, majestic feel, the awe of what I'm seeing. This is also so I can get Blood's drip, and there's a mimic tier. Of course, I have to fight it first. And this fight made me laugh, as the strength build fighting a strength build is just two people seeing who can stand longer in a punching contest. Further down this area, we find this summon for Mimic Tier. Now, my rule for this is I can only use Mimic Tier for a few specific bosses in the future. Can't abuse them. But Leyndell, here I come with my giant weighted sword and Radahn's drip I took off his back. I'm ready to be Elden Lord. Now, when you enter Leyndell capital, you see how organized the knights are. They are smart, grouped, their armor is clean and sharp. This is what it means to be a knight. It shows that the capital, only the best of the best knights can be here, even though it only takes like 1 or 2 flicks to kill them. This place is so heavily guarded. Even the dead still guard this place with such vigor. Tree sentinels at every turn, representing the might of the Golden Order. And Margit comes back from the dead to run the I killed you! And the Bouncer, the Draconian Tree Sentinel. And damn, I thought normal Tree Sentinels were bad. This man 2-tapped me on a normal day with 30 vigor. And when you think, oh, he staggers, I can just hit him, run away, and zone him out. Yeah, and then for some reason his horse is shooting fire and he starts calling lightning down from the sky. But dealing with this Bouncer isn't that hard. What I think a lot of people aren't realizing is you need to look at the lightning. I figured out this boss so much as soon as I saw his hammer and shield. When he brings down his shield, that's when the lightning hits. When his horse's head goes up, that's when the fireball's coming. When he summons the lightning, you know you're going to have to play the defensive for a little bit. But we make it to Leyndell. The sounds of trumpets always played in Leyndell by some bubble blowing babies. But this area is massive and it's so easy to get lost. What? I don't think I'm supposed to be here. A sewer system with my 3 favorite enemies: rats, hands, and super seniors. Come give me a hug. This massive area alone can be daunting to explore, as the map doesn't help you in the slightest. But what kept this place really entertaining was seeing everyone walk around with the same sword as me. The strength build runs deep, and also the messages around here. Y'all need to stop with this. Like the one message that said, "Oh, armaments ahead," and I thought, nice, armor ahead? Don't mind if I do. But no, it meant Iron Maiden, my least favorite enemy. But the messages make these games feel so good. To everyone who's put trap ahead of chess, who at any legend says, "Try jumping," or the string of messages that said Fortnite, and people overseas thought, oh, is there a fort in the nighttime? It would appear if it's night, but it's just Americans goofing about a battle royale. Like, this community is completely unspoken, but it's such a glimmer of Elden Ring's beauty. We all share victories, even if I never summoned an NPC. There's a message of triumph. After getting lost for what felt like an hour, I made it to the dragon, where you climb and then stand at Godfrey, or at least a summon of him. This is just strength on strength. He typically is open after 4 swings, but I really have to time it just right. He is one of my favorite bosses in the game, just for how smooth fighting him feels. It doesn't feel like a fight for my life. It feels like a contest between warriors. The other thing that I'm noticing a trend with him is that this game reuses bosses. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but at least 5 main bosses, you'll see the moveset more than once. But typically what is happening is there's a phase 1 that is like the same as another boss with the same name, and phase 2 is drastically different, or there's just similar moves. I do like this, as it teaches you what you're up against. When you see the same move, you're like, oh, I remember that. That makes it feel a lot easier, as every other move might be something you just can't react to. But once you see the one, it makes you remember, wait, I got this. On the topic of things kind of being easy, I think the fact that there are billions of sites of grace, it's like every 5 steps with these, adds another layer to the easiest. Also, all the things you get, the flask of crimson tears, the ashes of war, the summons, everything in this game can make it easier. Yes, Elden Ring is hard. It's probably the hardest Souls game there is. It seems daunting, but it's not, because the game is also giving you so much knowledge, so many items. It's like, hey, use these, please. And after Godfrey, it's a rematch. Instead of Margit, it's Morgott. How many times do I have to teach you this lesson, old man? He just does not learn. He believes he can shoulder our ambition, but for story reasons, I do summon Melania into my side. She does kind of trivialize this fight. There is the trade of the boss having more health and doing more damage, but she takes all the aggro, so it leaves me time to wail on him. I did get close, like 1 hit away to beating him by myself, and then died purposely just so I could have Melania summoned for story reasons. But damn, bro, why didn't you use this when you first fought me? He holds his attacks, but they're way faster this time around. And be extra careful. Phase 2, his sword can cause bleed or just one-shot you with a sword grab. I was not ready for that. But I'm glad I fought him for real this time. Or at least, like, did an attempt and faked it out. As my first run, I went at him with Mimic Tear. And I was like, oh, cool, let me use my new summon I just got. This is going to be so much fun. And Mimic Tear just brutalized him. That thing is and still is busted. Now, Melania, it gives us the Roid Medallion to go to the mountaintops of the giants. And with the hardest gatekeeper, the Black Gargoyle, this thing still gives me issues to this day. All his half-hitting attacks, it's like, damn, they really don't want me to go to this mountain. But this frozen cold winter is my favorite. This area is not. It always seems like the area I just quickly run through as fast as possible. The mini bosses in this area are the same 5 dragons, but with frost, or death birds, but with frost. It's not very interesting, and I have this issue with most of the game from this point on. Other than the Haligtree and Farum Azula, the main areas to explore are just disappointing. It feels like it was very rushed. Like they couldn't finish this part of the game, like they needed to get it out. Or the game's just telling you, you've explored enough, now we just want you to push through to the end. There's less buildings, less to do, but I guess that makes sense because Mogh and Malienia are optional, so those are big draws to being in this area. Also, just like it's so empty. There's only really one place to explore, and that's this mini castle you quickly run through to get to your run back with Shaq. Is an interesting boss using his own spirit summons, but instead of rot this time, thank God, it's Frost and Lightning. I originally always had issues with him in my original playthrough. He was just such a challenge, and I had to use Mimic Tier. It's like I couldn't beat him, but I didn't forsake my pride this time, and I beat him solo. I don't know why, but I guess with the knowledge, I was more powerful. My second playthrough in this game has made something that used to take me 80 hours to do into a 20-hour nice relaxing breeze. But on to Fire Giant, the next obstacle in becoming the Elden Lord. I like when bosses allow us to use Torrent, especially in these big open areas. It's so much fun, but for a boss like Fire Giant, it's almost required. Phase 1, not as much, as it's just an ankle bite, but FromSoft changed up the typical giant ankle bite fight, where he cuts off his own leg and he starts playing the zoning game. Now, this is where Torrent becomes useful and almost mandatory. Dodging the fire and trying to stay alive and slowly chip that massive health bar. I'm unsure if Fire Giant has the biggest health bar of all bosses, but I wouldn't be surprised if he did. Fire Giant defeated Melania. Braces herself to burn the erdtree so we continue our journey. The one thing I say is, this really feels so unimpactful. She's barely has any screen time and interaction, and when you do interact with her, it sounds like it's just base narration. Like, with what they were trying to do with Melania, I feel like they should have done more. Like, I'm pretty sure in most people's playthrough, people will have more interaction with Alexander and Gideon than Melania ever will. Also, I'm pretty sure most of the fan bases chooses Ranni as their main choice. But with burning of the erdtree, we are thrown into Farum Azula. And I'm going to put that on pause before I run through Malekith. There's 2 areas that need to be dealt with. Step 1, the Moghlester. Well, not anymore. He beat the allegations, but that's for another video. Mogh Palace, the City of Blood. Another disappointing one. It's an underground area and it looks pretty, but there's just this giant river of blood and an invasion with a man who called us maidenless. And boom, now you're at Mogh. It's more or less a visual spectacle than like an actual cool dungeon to go through. It feels like the end game was rushed. Boss-wise, absolutely not. These bosses are so much fun. But the areas just feel like, just get to the boss, bro. Just keep pushing. You'll be at the boss in no time. Yep, I know that's what you want anyways, so just go there. Rush straight to Mogh, the Lord of Blood. More like the Lord of Incest. Bro, he likes his brother Miquella a bit too much.
Dearest Miquella.
I have no idea why, and it's always been this way, but Mogh is probably one of the hardest bosses for me in general. Melania definitely killed me more, I'm not gonna lie, but she doesn't feel as tough as Mr. Moghlester over here. His timing is just weird enough to mess me up, but I can only stagger him in phase 1 and get a lot of good damage. It's that start of phase 2. It's kneel. It's a completely unavoidable massive health reduction. Like, you're just giving him 3 heals. Like, alright, take my 3 heals. I know what time it is. And if it's not unavoidable, please, someone tell me. I am glad with being wrong about that. Phase 2 is just so annoying. There's blood and fire everywhere. I always feel like it's a miracle when I beat him. And at this point, his strikes do so much damage that typically he hits for a third or half health. And then, even then, you're walking around. If you sit in the fire, you instantly build bleed. And if you get bleed proc, your run's just over. Hours of hard-fought battles and almost throwing my controller, I beat Mogh. No wonder so many people were shocked when they wanted to play the DLC, only to realize, wait, I have to beat Mogh? Only 30% of the player base before the DLC had ever beaten him. Now, defeating him does open the opportunity for a new land for new adventures, but I think that's for another day. On to the Haligtree. I like seeing this place. It's the place for the broken and unwanted. All are welcome here, even bubble-blowing babies. But to get here, it's a little bit of a pain because you have to go through this little city with death knights everywhere. I just hate being jumped. The Haligtree is probably the coolest final area. Fought before that are now just normal enemies from throughout the game. It's this massive expansive tree, the home for the broken, the home for the unwanted. And to get to the capital, we fight Loretta. Again, honestly, because I've already fought her, this fight is nothing. My sword can even stun her. One thing I am seeing though is that certain builds have an easier time with certain bosses. I'm playing a strength build in this playthrough, but I played a dex in my last one and I had a harder time with Loretta, but an easier time with Margit. So boss difficulty also really does depend very much on the build. But finally, the base of the Haligtree. Like I said earlier, the knights are rusted and broken, but these are Malenia's trained soldiers. They're always ready to one-to-ones. But Miquella's knights, the ones who are stationed at the Haligtree, are so unaware of everything. They've known too much peace. Half of them are asleep or drinking. I can stand right next to them and I don't even realize I'm there. There's so much peace at the Haligtree that your presence is almost undetected at times. And you're coming in an intruder, you're disturbing the peace. Also, you can have a 1v1 with Malienia, a boss you don't even have to fight. But here's the thing, it's not about that. It's about sending a message. The hardest boss in this game, well, maybe other than DLC, Malienia, the Blade of Miquella, the so-called undefeated champion. Sure, but Radahn would have won that fight, so maybe stop bragging. But I understand why she is the hardest boss. Remember when I said Demon of Hatred is like a Souls boss in a Sekiro game? Well, Melania is a Sekiro boss in a Souls game. The speed and strike capability of this girl, especially with my Ugga Dugga slow to intelligent strength build, I am getting melted. But on top of that, you have to play this fight perfectly, as every time she hits you, she is going to heal. And even when you're playing it perfectly, she has this waterfall dance, which if you don't dodge just right, you're dead. And if that wasn't enough, there's a phase 2 with Scarlet Rot on almost every move. Gigantic attacks, faster combos. It's harder to predict the AI as she's way more aggressive. But the grace of phase 1 is she will not attack you if you run far away, giving you a lot of time to heal and take buffs, which will also reset what I call the water flow timer. If you're way too aggressive, it builds faster. If you're running away, it kind of slows down. I have not been as stressed, as locked in, as destroyed than fighting Malienia. She broke me, but also gave me such a sweet victory. When she finally experienced defeat, Malienia wasn't a wall. Malienia was a mountain that I couldn't see the top of. Miyazaki did make such a great boss with her, and she really gave me that feeling I wanted from the past when I played Souls games as a noob, is that feeling of just, you did it. After days, hours of just trying. Triumph feels so great. Now, the last area of the game. Crumbling Faramazula, the dragon's homeland. The massive tornado, the dragons flying around, running into dragons at every turn. The final area is incredible. The tornado that brings everyone's frame rate down by 10 frames. And the midway through fighting Godskin Duo. This is where we can jump. Mimic Tier, get out here. If they jump in, I'm jumping. Honestly, it's not that much of a challenge. Even without Mimic Tier, you deal with the Apostle first and then you fight the Noble. You just have to make sure you get their health down before they activate their phase 2 abilities. This is one of the few fights I use Mimic Tier, but I hate when people say, oh, this build isn't playing the game. Oh, this build is not a real way to play. Oh, you use Mimic Tier? You didn't actually beat the boss. Man, people should just be able to enjoy. If they like playing it this way, let them play it this way. It doesn't matter that someone else had a different build or used a summon. Let people just enjoy things. If they want to use Mimic Tier, let them use Mimic Tier. My pride doesn't let me, only on certain bosses. If they jumping, I'm jumping. Now, what I also love about Farum Azula is all the secret things. My favorite secret boss, even more secret than Malienia, Dragon Lord Placidusax. This is one of the coolest dragons fights in the game. The lightning, the fire, the multi-headed beast that burns bright. In the first 30 seconds, he hits us with a lightning nuke, dual fire breath attacks, claw attacks that shatter me to pieces. He starts teleporting into the claws. This doesn't feel like a dragon fight. Most dragons just run away and breathe fire. Here, no. You are dueling him. Those dual laser beams came out. They were so unexpected. The thing is, this boss is hard to find though. You have to jump to a hidden path that is completely hidden, lay down, and then watch the world travel back in time to defeat him. A lot of bosses are this way, either blocked off by a side quest or some hidden path that's really hard to come by. I wouldn't be surprised if there is a boss in this game no one has found and fought just somewhere lurking in Elden Ring. And another in-game side journey brings me to all Elden Ring and all Dark Souls side content. Tragedy. Alexander, a jar friend helping us with Radahn and other places, asked us to fight in a duel. He wants to fight a great warrior and prove himself. He will honor us with this request, but I feel so bad because it's so easy. In 3 hits, he goes down. And I just don't want to do it. Just can't. But with his defeat, he gives us an item, a piece of him, to always have by our side. Why, Miyazaki? Why? Why do you kill all our favorite NPCs? Like, I had to kill Blide for his armor. I mean, that drip is kind of worth it, not gonna lie. Even Huge, my man, all he wanted was to make a god-slaying weapon. But you leave him burning, lost, forgotten in the erdtree. The very end of Farum Azula, Malekith, the Black Blade. It's crazy because if you look at him, it's the Merchant of Death who eats the death roots. Crazy build up there. He's the dealer of death. Round 1's easy. Learning the time and the animation, go through the rocks. He'll cut a lot, but I was always able to get around and deal my damage. And Alexander's shard is impressive. Like, the damage I'm doing with my flips now are crazy. But phase 2 is when the Black Blade emerges. And it's just over. It's so over. He starts by, well, cheating and taking away my health with his bull-destined death. And anytime you think you can hit him, nuh-uh. He does a useful backflip and throws more death attacks. He's literally aging me at every hit. Honestly, my run with him and beating him was pure luck. He just kind of stood there and took 4 lion's claws to the face, and I won. I was like, I'll take it. I will say Mogh, Malienia, and Malekith were challenges like no other. The bosses that frustrated and killed me the most. But that feeling of victory when they finally net defeat is like no other. It's what I live for, overcoming challenges that actually test my skill. They never seem impossible with what I have, but they're not a cakewalk either. And I don't know if that feeling of joy of finally overcoming that challenge can be replicated. Destined Death then rules the world again, and immediately I'm back in the capital, the very end of the game. Our first roadblock to becoming the true Elden Lord is Gideon, and what a joke. He spams magic from other bosses and dies in like 5 hits. He speaks, a tarnished can never be Elden Lord, and I always wondered, why would he say that? But I think I understand now. He's so egotistical that if he couldn't become Elden Lord, that no one could, because he thinks he's the best of the best. But all he does is sit in his chair looking in his books, a knowledge-filled pompous prick that head is so far up his own ass he couldn't see that everyone around him was just better than him. And then roadblock number 2, the first Elden Lord, Godfrey. God, this is my favorite fight. Phase 1 is just like before, but he can spike the whole stage, so you need to be perfect with those iframes. He always has time for an opening for good hits, but you can't be too greedy because he'll get you and hit you hard. In Phase 2, it's just perfect. It's just perfect. Killing his lying and breaking its head and fighting us warrior to warrior. Godfrey is the name of the Elden Lord. Horaluct is his name as a warrior. his true self. This massive hulking man starts throwing you 20 feet in the air, and his lunge, they did such a good job with the animation. He slows down, and if you know the timing, that's when you dodge. But if you don't know the timing, it's just a slow-mo to your imminent death. He fights like a beast in the man's body. The claws, the grapples, it's like Wolverine and Hulk in one boss fight. But his defeat, unlike Gideon, he shows respect, saying we have the strength of a lord.
Thy strength befits a crown.
Last final challenge, America, or well, Radahn. The half of America, still loyal to the greater will. And I'm not going to go over this convoluted half-sibling weird-ass family tree. Just know Radahn and America, same person. Radahn is probably one of the most fair but tough bosses in the game. He has openings, and he has a fair amount of them, but the timing to get them. He can also range you out. For a melee boss, that's where it can be unfair. No bullshit hard you want to rake out your eyes, and not so easy that you fall asleep. A reasonable challenge. Fitting. But what comes next is a disappointment. The Elden Beast has the exact issue I have with all dragon fights. They just run away. It's trying to be like the dragon in Sekiro, but fails. Now, I am happy that DLC you can use Torrent, and originally you could not, and that made this boss fight such a headache. But instead of talking about how bad this boss is, I want to make a suggestion. And it will never happen, but this is cool to think about. Instead of the Elden Beast coming out, the cutscene goes, the Elden Beast appears, but Radahn absorbs its powers. Now you have to fight an Elden Beast powered Radahn. Similar moves to phase 1, but now it can do the ring light, send the flying beams, and also use the fire. And can summon a special sword just like the Elden Beast, and that would make for such a cooler boss fight. Oh! Just imagining that. And it's what I wished would have happened in a lot of Souls games, but this is an issue of balance. How do you make a boss like Malienia and then make the final boss a challenge more interesting? If I fight Malienia, Radahn seems like nothing. Of course, there's a balance. You don't want to make the final boss too hard. You got to make them hard, but not too hard, because Malienia are, for example, in DS3, Unnamed King are optional bosses, but they are harder than the final boss. The only game I really didn't see this out of was Sekiro, which is not a Souls game. Maybe that's why. Elden Ring's end feels a little anticlimactic. The build-up was great. Malekith, Godfrey, Radahn, just to fight a worm. I've been through Malienia. I've been through Mogh. This doesn't feel like the world-ending threat it should have. But I know the DLC's got me, so we'll leave it at that. Elden Ring is a 10 out of 10 game, even with the ending I complain about. It's really such a great game, a wall that may seem impossible, but through knowledge, effort, everything is claimable. Whether that's beating Malienia or just beating your first enemy. And if you think about it, you're just playing as you. In most games, you play as the chosen hero, like Link, or you're living through someone else's great life, like Cloud. But here, you're just another tarnished. Margit probably says, foul tarnished a billion times a day, and that's what we all are. But you prove through determination and grit, and by struggling, that you aren't some chosen one, you're just the one who pushed. Like when people, every time a new Souls game comes out, complains about difficulty, they just can't understand what it's like to start as nothing, a nobody, another tarnished, and become something great. Not because you were chosen, but because you never gave up. At the end of the day, any lowly tarnished with a spirit of ambition can become Elden Lord.
The fallen leaves tell a story.
of how a tarnished became Elden Lord. In our home, across the fog, the lands between. Our seed will look back upon us and recall an age of fracture.